Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Vintage Bolton. What a glorious day to do the hardest part of my ARXB acoustic research restoration. I'm going to be modifying and rewiring the Tonearm, and I'm scared. And this is the stage where literally more things can go wrong than any other part of this turntable restoration. We're going to need coffee, maybe some beer later. So the main things I'm going to be doing is replacing the bearings in this Tonearm pivot. I've already got an example of one that I've already done from a previous build where I've replaced the bearings in here. And as I take this apart on this one, you'll understand probably more what's going on. And of course, we're going to be rewiring the Tonearm. I've got some 36 gauge wire here, which is actually probably a bit too thin. The original, I think, is 33. Some of these things are really expensive to get into Australia. That 33 gauge Cardus wire from the States, by the time I pay for postage, it's just not worth it. Like, it'd be $100 Australian for me to get the wire I need from Cardus. Obviously, I've already cut this away from the turntable, disconnected it from the terminals. If you'd like to see how I did that, a link above and below to stripping down the turntable. Now let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is completely disassemble it. Obviously, I've already taken off the head shell, but I'm just keeping that so I can make reference of the original wiring. I've already loosened these for a bit of a test run, but the last time I did this, they were in so hard. I put too much pressure on them in the end and actually snapped this pivot block. Game over. So that's one thing that could go wrong. If they're tight, I usually use lots of WD-40, lots of lube, maybe some heat. So this is the pivot block. And all of the ARXA and XB's original bearing is Delrin, which is like a very, very hard plastic, low resonance. It's really good in other applications. But even with these tiny pins, I can see lots of wear in that bearing. Now, I've done a few of these now, and I found a few different types of sizes of the diameter of the Delrin. And so in my previous build, I used ruby sapphire cups, which are exceptional. Low resonance, tough, it's going to last forever. Again, only problem is just to get about 4 of them, because there's a minimum order, and I'll put the website above, so if you're in the States, go for your life. But to get them here in Australia, it's cost me about another $100, which is ridiculous. So this time I wanted to use these, I salvaged these tiny bearings from another turntable. Bonus points if anyone can figure out what turntable it came from, but they're probably very common anyway. So basically for this modification, all I have to do is drill new holes in here to accommodate for whatever bearing I'm using. Obviously, if you know the data of the bearings you're using, like these ones, which is available online, you're going to know the diameter, but with this one it's a little bit of guesswork. The diameter of the Delrin on this one, and this one is actually from an XA, so it is different. But I have seen XBs with a very small amount of Delrin, a very small diameter Delrin in here. So, this is what I found. This is what I'm going to use. I'm going to drill bigger holes just in the Delrin to accommodate for these. I'm going to super glue them in. We're going to polish these, and that part will be done. So I'm going to completely remove the pins first and polish them. Just carefully insert these pins into the drill, like that. 800 grit sandpaper for metal first, and just on the edge of a table, start slowly and just run it along there. So it didn't go as smoothly as I intended, but it worked out okay in the end. I had to use a couple of drill bits, starting with a smaller one and working my way up to bore out a lot of that Delrin. And now that Delrin's adding as a packing for my bearing to sit in there. And with some glue, should stay in there quite nicely. Like that. Let's get into it. First thing we need to do is attach the wand. I've already snipped the wires there. There's a great article online on Vinyl Nirvana. I'll put a link above and below for that. What I need to do is pull this plastic receptacle out without breaking it, you know, with some needle nose pliers. It takes a bit of wiggling. This article online was genius, you know, something like that. The right drill bit, and that'll stop me from crushing the receptacle. If I break any part of this, I'll have to go to plan B, which is replacing the arm wand with a Technics arm wand, and I'll have to source the collar. Yay! That came out. All right, ready to do some soldering. First I need to remove these wires, heat up each one first, and pull the old wires out. I do want to make sure that I don't heat it up for too long because this plastic can melt. Yippee, another thing that can go wrong, eh? From what I've read, the red line is the top of the head shell. So if I go by that, I can see the old wiring and know which wire's going to go where. I just didn't have a black color, so I'm going to replace the black with blue. Okie dokie. So now I just need to twist the wires around each other to fend off any EMI, electromagnetic interference. I start by twisting one channel first. Okay, there's one channel. Now for the other one. Okay, there's two channels, and then around each other. Almost there. Alrighty, tied it off at the ends there. I'm ready to put everything back together. And we are done. Okay, so let's say I really did want to do the Technics arm wand modification. And why would I want to do that? Because in my heart, I really want to use these head shells because I think they look so cool and I think they really are good. But the problem is these plastic nubs here. See, they just get worn down the more you take them in and out. Say if you want to change cartridges. And this is a new one that I bought from a really good supplier on eBay. Everything about them is awesome, and it's not their fault. It's just the way it was designed by AR. And I've only changed this maybe 3-4 times, put it in and out of the wand. And the nub down there is already starting to wear. And I just know in my mind, in my heart that, I don't want to be buying a new head shell every, 6 to 12 months. So to make it a bit more future-proof, I need to steal an arm wand from another turntable. And it needs to be around about the same length, but overhang can be adjusted with this pivot block, and about the same geometry. And the ones that seem to work best come from the Technics turntables. So I don't even remember where these came from, but I have 2 there. I don't even know what I've done with the collar of these ones, but for some reason I don't have them. Now the Technics turntables, even the lower end ones, are still fetching, really high prices. So my advice would be be patient, seek out a donor turntable that's not working, that's, you know, gonna cost you less than $50 online, because to buy these arm wands and these collars from new manufacturers these days costs a bomb. Another one that I found that is really cheap and also suits comes from this Sherwood turntable. The Newmark turntables, those really low-end budget DJ turntables. And it uses the same SME collar. So I can basically use any head shell that I want that's SME compatible, the SME connection, and they're gonna last a long time. Great. I found that this arm tube though, from the Sherwood, is definitely heavier than the original and the Technics ones. It feels actually really solid, really well made. So that would be fine to use. But I'm gonna put the collar on this one. I'm gonna rewire it because I think these wires are too thick. You might get one that has, you know, sort of 33 gauge wire, but these are too thick, and that will restrict the movement of the tone arm of the AR turntable. Super simple. 2 tiny grub screws with washers. Do not lose them. It slides out like that. Pull the wire out. I'm actually going to reuse this wire. Why would I waste it? See, by now that there's no glue in that, that comes out. Super easy. Okay, so that's all finished. I've put it all back together. Technics arm one and collar, so they can use any SME style head shell, and they're not going to get worn down. I've got the option of using the ruby bearings or the ball bearings. Fresh wire, obviously going to have the counterweight on, so stay tuned for when I reinstall this back into the chassis and the top plate. You can see how I wire it down into their terminals. I obviously still need to get a new ground wire, so I'm going to be sourcing a black one so that I don't get confused. If you've got any questions about this process, please leave a comment below, because I know this can be confusing It's confusing for me just trying to do it and film it at the same time. And likewise, if you think I could have done anything better, please let me know. Bye for now.